And it reminds us of one of the Salaf of this Ummah from the Tabi'een, Ataa bin Abi Rabah, rahimahullah ta'ala, from the Tabi'een, from the students of Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Umar. And he was a black man. And he was born as a slave. And then he was freed. And it is said that his appearance was unsightly. Ibn Sa'ad said about him, as collected by Imam al-Dhahabi in Siyar, that he said that he was a freed slave of Bani Fihr. Yet all of the people of Mecca would go to him, and also go to Mujahid, one of the other A'imma, for religious verdicts, with most of them actually going to Ataa bin Abi Rabah. And the scholars that they described Ataa bin Abi Rabah in his form, they said that he was a black man who had one eye. He was one-eyed, and he was black, and he was snub-nosed, nose like a bean, and he was crippled. That's how they described him. But in reality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises the people. Remember, he is in Mecca, a freed slave, black. So what is in the minds of those people who look at forms and look at ajsam and look at the bodies of people? They want to know that the one that they're taking knowledge from, or that they are accompanying rather, and that they want to be around, that his body is sound, that he doesn't have any blemishes. Here we have a man that they used to say about him in his appearance that he was crippled, and he was blind in one eye, and he was unsightly. So his mother said to him, when he was still a young man, a young boy, he said, "Come here, my son, Ataa, and listen to me. You are a small boy, you are small in stature, and you are clumsy in your walk." Why? Because he was crippled. "And you are a freed slave. And on top of that, you are one-eyed." He was blind in one eye. "So I tell you, my son, go out and seek knowledge." So it is said that she mentioned these characteristics to him, so that he understands that that does not matter, that he goes out and he pursues his life and he seeks knowledge. When he heard these words from his mother, it toughened his heart, gave him resolve in his heart. So he pursued knowledge, so much so that his knowledge overshadowed all of those things that his mother knew about him. He's crippled, the fact that he was crippled, the fact that he was a freed slave, the fact that some of the people will look at the color of his skin. He didn't care. He only could see through one eye. Ataa bin Abi Rabah, this tabi'i, became the leader of the people in knowledge in Mecca, such that the leader of the Muslims, Hisham bin Abdul Muttalib, such that the leader of the Muslims, he said that no one is allowed to give fatawa to the Hujjaj who come to perform Hajj except for Ataa. This doesn't mean that there weren't other scholars there. They were there. Imam Ibn Qayyim, he mentioned from Imam Shafi'i in the book of Ibn Qayyim, A'lam al-Muwaqqi'een, the Imam Shafi'i, who was from the people of Quraysh, and Imam Shafi'i was a pure Arab and a leader amongst the Arabs in knowledge. He said, if I'm asked about an issue of knowledge and I have nowhere to look for the evidence for that, he said, I blindly follow Ataa bin Abi Rabah. Imam al-Awza'i said, rahimahullah, who died in the year 157, Imam Shafi died in 204. Imam al-Awza'i said that the day that Ataa died, he was from the most beloved of the people upon this earth. This is Ataa bin Abi Rabah, my brothers and my sisters. This Ataa bin Abi Rabah, who was loved by the people regardless of the color of his skin, or the disability in his limbs, or the blindness in his eye. Why? Because indeed, Inna Allah la yanzuru ila ajsamikum, or in a narration, ila suwarikum, for indeed Allah does not look at your bodies, Allah does not look at your forms, nor does He look at your possessions. And there's an occasion that is mentioned about Ataa bin Abi Rabah, that he went to see the leader of the believers. He went to see the leader of the Muslims on an occasion. And when he went to see him, that he, on the way of to that journey, that he was seen on the back of a donkey. Rahimahullahu ta'ala. And this is mentioned by Sa'id bin Mansur upon the authority of Uthman bin Ataa al-Khurasani. He said, I set off alongside my father, who wanted to visit Hisham. Hisham, of course, the leader. Hisham bin Abdul Muttalib, the leader. He went to see him. So he said, I went with my father to go and visit Hisham. He said, when we came close to his house, an elderly man approached us. An elderly black man approached us whilst riding a camel. He was wearing a dirty shirt and a dirty garment, a thobe, and he had a dusty cap fixed to his head, and the stirrup of his sandal was made from wood. He said, I was young, so I began to laugh, and I said to my father, who is this Bedouin? He replied, be quiet and be silent. This is the chief of the jurists of the fuqaha amongst the people of Hijaz. This is Ataa bin Abi Rabah. It didn't matter to this man of intellect and knowledge and wisdom the dustiness of his clothes, or the fact that he was wearing a dirty shirt, or that he had a dirty cap or a dusty cap upon his head. It didn't matter to him. He said, be quiet. This is the chief of the fuqaha, of the scholars amongst the people of Hijaz, of Makkah and Medina. This is Ataa bin Abi Rabah. When he drew close, my father descended from his mule, and Ataa bin Abi Rabah descended from his mule, and they both embraced each other with love and affection, and they spoke amongst each other, and then they both returned to their mounts, and they rode up until they reached the door of Hisham. And then they entered, and the story goes on how he advised the ruler of with regard to looking after the poor and feeding the poor and looking after those who defend the borders of Islam and aiding knowledge and advising him to fear Allah. This is Ataa. And Hisham, who was the leader of the time, he put his head down and he listened and he listened and he listened and he accepted every request of this crippled, freed slave, black man who could only see through one eye, wearing a thobe or a garment that was dirty. Why? Because those early Muslims, that they respected, whether they were Arab or non-Arab, they respected a man because of his piety and his knowledge. As the Prophet ﷺ said, O people, indeed your Lord is one Lord, and your father is one man, and he is Adam. Verily the Arab is no better than the non-Arab, and the non-Arab is no better than the Arab, and a white person is no better than a black person, and a black person is no better than a white person, except that the better person is the one who is dutiful to Allah and fears Allah. This is what the Prophet ﷺ commanded his people with.